Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, Jess, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Chris Mueller in a matter of moments, like right now, over to 93.7 The Fan Cam, and we definitely have a lot to talk about here tonight. The Pirates with the 9-4 win. Actually, as bad as they were yesterday, and I just said that, they've actually been pretty good for the last 6. They won 3 of the last 4 they won, a 9-4 win tonight, which I still don't understand. When I look at this lineup, I would still continue to play Henry Davis for as bad as he's been. I don't know what Yasmani Grandal does for us now, right at this point of the season.
Yasmani Grandal is probably coming back next year because Paul Skeens likes throwing to him, and Paul Skeens might get the personal catcher treatment. So just prepping everyone for that right now, because I think that's a prediction I'm making on September 5th that's going to end up being proven true in several months.
Well, then what does that do with Joey Bart and Henry Davis and Endy Rodriguez? I mean, what do you do? Now you have 4 catchers?
No, I think Joey Bart's going to be their actual starting catcher next year, and he should be. I think Henry Davis is going to be a man without a position whose bat doesn't dictate that he deserves a roster spot. And I think they're going to slow play Endy Rodriguez and consider using him at a variety of positions. But I think Joey Bart has earned the right, with the bat that he's shown this year, to be their everyday catcher next year. Grandal is probably going to be the guy who catches Skeens and occasionally maybe gives one other guy a day off, but I think that's how they're going to handle this, Richie.
Do you think there's any scenario where you take a guy like Bart and Rodriguez and maybe you platoon them at first and catcher?
I mean, if Bart can play passable defense at catcher, if he can play well enough to be your everyday catcher and give you an 800 or so OPS, give you the kind of offense he's given you, he's just got way more value behind the plate than he does at first base. And if, you know, there's a situation I could squint and see they get Endy eased back into things, maybe they have him play first base or they have him do something other than catch, but I have this sinking feeling that Grandal, who provides very little other than Paul Skeens likes pitching to him, I think he's going to be back. But Henry Davis feels like the odd man out. You said you'd keep trotting him out there. I think his average has actually gone down since he came back up. I mean, the guy has just shown absolutely nothing. It's a massive failure of development, of drafting a guy 1-1 that appears to not be able to hit Major League pitching. I've long since run out of patience with the Henry Davis situation.
He's batting 140 and some change, and the problem with him right now, you're not going to get anything for him. So that's why I would trot him out here for the next 20 games and see if he can do anything these last couple weeks of the season. All right, now to the Steelers. You think this is a big problem? Russell Wilson limited today. Are we all making too big of a deal about it? But his calf, he still has some calf tightness. Tomlin isn't concerned. He says he feels comfortable with Justin Fields out there. But I think there's something more to this, mainly because I guess he didn't talk to the media today. I wasn't there today. But I don't know if there's plans for him to talk tomorrow. But if he's limited tomorrow, his status is way up in the air for Sunday.
If he doesn't talk tomorrow and Fields does talk, I think we can reasonably infer that Fields is then going to be the starting quarterback if he doesn't flat out say it. Mike Tomlin, as far as him not being concerned by the extent and severity of Russell Wilson's calf tweak here, Mike lies all the time about that kind of stuff when he's giving his opinion. So I think this could be an example of him lying. Do I think it is a big deal? Yes, because Russell Wilson at anything less than 100% capacity, particularly as it pertains to his mobility or lack thereof, is a sitting duck back there. He is still somebody who wants to get out of the pocket, get to the edges, have design rollouts. If his mobility is compromised to any significant degree, and I do mean any, they need to go with Justin Fields. And I say that as somebody that thought Russell Wilson was clearly the better option of the two, despite his shortcomings and his limitations. This is a soft tissue injury, Richie, for a guy who's in his mid-30s. You and I are both older than Russell Wilson, so therefore you and I both know, despite being weekend warriors, even when you're one of those guys like us, things that happen to you when you're 25 physically take a lot less time to heal than they do when you're 35 or when you're 45. It only gets worse, and that basic principle also applies to highly trained professional athletes. So I think this is one to watch. I think it's bad news, and it further just calls into question and opens for ridicule the strength and conditioning workout that got him injured in the first place, which was completely preposterous.
I'm going to give Hokey Bro 76 some props here. He was basically the only one in town on the Mason Rudolph train last year. He appears to be right. And when we did the final preseason game together, he actually talked about that Justin Fields might give this team, especially the way the line is made up right now, the best chance of winning because it has athleticism. I don't disagree with that, but the problem is you can't start Justin Fields unless you have an injury like this, because you need to see, you brought Wilson in to be the guy. You got to let him fail first.
Well, if he has an injury that you know, puts him at 85% probably, I think you do start Fields and you just say, Russ, we'll try to get you healthy for week 2. And then, quite honestly, in a cutthroat business like the NFL, if Justin Fields were to go out on the road in Atlanta and, I don't know, throw for a touchdown, run for a touchdown, play mistake-free ball, and the Steelers sneak in there as underdogs and get a win, I don't really think you could go back to Russell Wilson at that point.
Not even
at least
going
not
back
until
to
Justin
Denver?
Fields.
I thought that was a lock. Going back to Denver,
I mean,
has to be Wilson,
there's the
right?
revenge factor part. Okay, the only way where you could go to Russell Wilson, even though the Steelers would be 1-0 without him in week 1, is if Fields goes in there and plays a really poor to mediocre game, and the Steelers' defense just rises up, and it's something like 16-13, but it's obvious that Justin Fields isn't the reason that they won. In that scenario, which, hey, it's happened a couple times here in recent season openers. They go and beat Cincinnati in an ugly game that was mostly defense. They beat Buffalo in a weird game as well, back when Roethlisberger was still there. If that happens, then, yeah, you can go back to Russell Wilson. But if you have to play Fields this week and he shows you something, that's just tough luck for Russ Wilson. I mean, you're 35 years old. Somebody just paid you $80+ million to go away. It's a bad break, but them's the breaks.
All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our GMC tweet of the night. This is from Jerry Dulac. This is the reason the Steelers were ultra cautious with Russell Wilson. He didn't have a Joe Burrow injury, but they didn't want it to become one. This isn't either, but the Steelers could be ultra cautious again for the same reason. No, I definitely think they're cautious. There's no doubt about that, Chris. But, you know, what do you think this is, 50-50 right now?
Boy, that's a good one. Judging by some of the little off-the-record things I'm hearing, or just from, you know, people who have more of a sense of things than I do because of their either, you know, proximity to, you know, practices or just their roles within the team, it does seem like there's real uncertainty. So 50-50 feels to me like, wow, we went from 0 to 100 on this really quick, where he seemed fine and now he's very much not fine. But with the amount of uncertainty I'm hearing that there is, yeah, I would say 50-50 is actually a pretty good number you just threw out there.
If he's limited tomorrow, he's not playing Sunday. That's just my prediction.
No way. No, if he doesn't look like a guy who can move around, he's not going to play, and he shouldn't play. I mean, the bottom line is here, they have two quarterbacks, and in Wilson they have a guy who clearly is not what he was 7 or 8 years ago, and frankly never will be again. He's never really adjusted his style of play. Even at his age, he still does need to be able to move. If you sit there and make Russell Wilson drop back 30+ times and he really isn't going to escape the pocket, you're going to beat Russell Wilson. And so if that's what he is physically limited to doing, it's really a dereliction of duty to actually play him. Justin Fields is a healthy body who can actually move, and a guy who actually probably makes it a little bit more of a headache to prepare for him, because while there's the turnover potential that he gives you as a defense, he also has big play potential. He's probably more of a headache for Raheem Morris and that defensive staff to deal with in Atlanta.
All right, let me give you a scenario. Say Russell Wilson is 80, 85%, and they decide to limit him at practice, and they're going to start Justin Fields. Do you make Russell Wilson the backup? Kind of like Ben Roethlisberger, remember Landry Jones?
You know what? That's a pretty good question, honestly. You got me thinking. I would actually not. If he's 80, 85%, and this has been a nagging, lingering injury that you really want to give more time to heal, I would actually make Kyle Allen my backup. So it's interesting that you pose that, but I would tell Russ, I would say, listen, we still think we're going to need you. This is a situation where we still think you're the starting quarterback long term. Like, you can say all this stuff before, you know, Justin Fields plays, and then if Justin Fields balls out, you throw all that out the window because, like I said earlier, cutthroat business. But I think that's a good point you bring up. If he's not really that close to healthy, this isn't something that you always say, you know, we have those injuries, Richie, where you say, well, it can't get any worse, so he can go out there and it's pain management. A calf injury like this absolutely can get worse if he's pressed into duty. So believe it or not, I would make Kyle Allen the backup.
And the makeup of the line right now, you have to take that into consideration. You have to.
Well, yeah, they're not, I mean, they're A, not healthy, and they're B, not good because they've still got, I think, a guy who isn't one of their best 5 when they're all healthy, playing starting left tackle, and Dan Moore. They should have Jones over there. Fautanu went full participation today. I know that. That's a pleasant surprise, but still hard for me to believe, even if he goes full tomorrow, which I assume he would, that they'd toss him right back in there. You're going to have Spencer Anderson playing left guard. You're going to have Zach Frazier making his first ever NFL start, snapping the football in a game that matters for the first time. Just feels like it would be a fool's errand to put somebody that's limited in their mobility, compromised physically behind that offensive line.
All right, let's go out to the phone lines. We got Chuck out in Uniontown. How you doing, Chuck?
Yeah, thanks, fellas. What I want to know is there any way that the Pirates can leave this season with any kind of positive taste in their mouth? I know overall this is going to be a failure because of how close we were to postseason play and then the losing streak. Because what I'm concerned about is this: trying to attract free agents who might want to come here before next year, because we got to flip this culture. Players don't want to play here because this is the dungeon. They don't want to win here. I mean, we've got some pieces, you know, we've got some players that are...
Chuck, you make a great point. I don't know how you flip the culture. I mean, what free agent would honestly want to come here? They've been awful for 3 decades outside of 3 years.
A.J. Burnett, when he was here in 2012 and McCutchen was on the rise, made it, I think, a little bit cooler to be a Pirate because A.J. Burnett was a tough guy. He was not going to be trifled with out there. He had attitude. He had some pedigree. He had been a World Series champ. So I think that made it a little easier. Then Russell Martin shows up, and they definitely overpaid based on what the market for him was back then. And that worked out swimmingly. And then you get Francisco Liriano, and you have Garrett Cole coming up. And suddenly, hey, like the Pirates are never going to be confused with the Yankees or the Dodgers or a glamour team, but suddenly they're a place where it's all right to go there. It's a great baseball town when the team is good and people are kind of filled with energy. As to Chuck's first point, though, because I don't really know how you get free agents to want to come here other than grossly overpaying good ones or just starting to win again, and that's kind of a catch-22. Can you take any positives out of this? I mean, they'd have to go on a tear these next 3 weeks that get them to like 82, 83 wins. And when you look up, they'd only be 4 games out of a playoff spot at season's end, I think, for anyone to feel good about this. But they've been, I know you said 4-2 in their last 6, Richie, but the lows for them have been so low. Rowdy Tellez finishing 3 games as a pitcher in the last 11 days it is now. The lows have been so low. It's what Chuck's talking about. It's that unbelievably embarrassing, demoralizing, dregs of the MLB kind of feeling that's permeated this team. And the only way you fix that is by winning. And, man, it's hard to win when you don't have the quality of player you need to for that kind of mission. And it's partly because they don't want to come here. I have no good answer. Chuck has brought up a problem that's like a Rubik's Cube, very difficult to solve.
Maybe they would come here because of Paul Skeens potentially and the starting 3 that they have and the potential of it. You brought up Rowdy Tellez. I think it's very interesting. I mean, three appearances on the mound, a first baseman, a position player since August 24th. And he snapped back at Noah Hiles from the Post-Gazette, who covers the team. Yesterday, Derek Shelton did. But I think it was maybe because of the way he phrased the question. I mean, I don't think it's a bad question to ask, but I think a better question, a line of questioning with that is how frustrating is it that you had to pitch a position player in 3 times in the last week or so? That's the way the question should have been phrased, and I don't think Derek Shelton would have snapped back at that.
I'm not going to question the way Noah phrased it at all. I'm going to fire back here. Derek Shelton would have said, "It's really frustrating, Noah. What do you think?" Derek Shelton answered the way he did, and it was completely fair. I actually thought Noah, I'm going to give him props. I thought he tried to frame it in a way that was kind of innocent and didn't, leave the Pirates or Shelton open for mockery. He pointed out that they don't have an off day. The reason Derek Shelton snapped on him like that is because Derek Shelton knows that he is in very big trouble, even though he got a mystery contract extension of undetermined length. He knows he is in very big trouble right now and probably not coming back as the manager, and that completely informs the kind of reaction he gave Noah to, I think, a fairly phrased and definitely fair to ask overall question about the way they use Tellez.
All right, I think, speaking of Tellez, I think he said something about a week ago or a few days ago where he said, all we got to do is win 9 of 11 and we're back in this. It was something to that effect. All right, so they won 4 of 6. Say they rattle off 5 straight. They're still, if they do that and do 9 out of 11, they would still be 1 game under 500, I believe, right? Or more than that. They're 66 and 74. So 5 more wins would put them at 71 and 74. Still 3 games back of 500.
Richie, I checked your index in the Gin app yesterday. I think you're a 6.2 right now.
Yeah.
So you've been here before where I'm going to describe. You start out a round, you maybe go double-double on the first 2 holes, and you're 4 over through 2 with 16 to play. But you get into your mind and you say, all I've got to do is play the next 12 holes 3 under par, and then I'll be 1 under with 4 to play, and then I can get in the barn right around even par. And you could probably count on 1 hand, if not no hands, the amount of times you actually play the next 12 holes 3 or 4 under. That is basically how I feel when I hear Rowdy Tellez say something like that.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a couple of minutes.